Greetings, everybody. It's Jim. You know, it's not a surprise that in the early days of Dungeons & Dragons, there was definitely a medieval feel to everything. It definitely showed its face in Greyhawk. Where your shields had heraldry on them. When your fighters got to level 9, they could have their own castles and they have their followers and such. And today, I'm going to be going over a game that really pushes the limit on the medieval feel of everything, because it is the quest for the quail. The holy quail. That should be an interesting adventure. Is that like trying to catch a greased pig? Okay, but anyway, this is a TFT adventure that for the fantasy trip adventure that a lot of people say is a really good one out of all the micro quests, and I kind of got to agree. And there's a lot of things about why it is that way. It's not necessarily the adventure itself, but anyway, I'm going to be going that over with you anyway today. So today I'm going to be going over with you why you should be using Grail Quest from microgaming, metagaming. Alright, now since we're talking about medieval role-playing and we're talking about the fantasy trip, I'm going to be very remiss if I do not talk about two big Kickstarters that are happening right now that are worth your attention. The first is Harnworld, the 40th anniversary hardcover. It is blowing up on the net, and that's not hyperbole, that's just not sales talk. This is actually a truth. Normally, in the first 3 days of a campaign over the weekend, we make about 11,000 and we get to 50,000 by the end. This one has gotten 50,000 in the first 3 to 4 days. Okay, we already hit the campaign goal that we normally would. It's just taken off mainly because it's the 40th anniversary hardcover, and everybody that loves Harn is pushing it, and they want to promote it to everybody. And the fact that probably there's something about the WotC debacle, and everybody's looking for a new system, and they're looking for new settings. They're looking for something new, and this is probably definitely a good way to go. Right? Anybody that knows Harnworld, please leave a comment below. Encourage everybody to check out this great setting. And it's also got 4 Kingdom books already set to go. So if you want to dive right in, you can. Also, of course, Fantasy Trip has Hexagram number 11 coming out, and it has one article from yours truly. I will go more into Hexagram 11 in another video later on. But definitely, I think these are both worth your time. So here we have the counter sheet right on over here. Now the thing is, when you're playing solo, you do get a little bit of a preview of what's to come, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? Because yeah, the surprise goes away, but the anticipation grows because it's like, oh, I get to fight a dragon. You've done it numerous times, but it never gets old. It's like, okay, what's their take on how I fight this dragon, right? David Pulver's Dragon Hunt is a great example of that, by the way. Check out that adventure. Now, the thing is that I have Grail Quest still set up over here because I haven't finished the adventure yet. I think I'm halfway through it. I want to show you here. These are all the characters. I mean, they're kind of stuck together, but I have gone through, there are like 24 characters in here. I have gone through, because you get sets of 3. Okay, you get your knight, maybe 2 knights, but you get your squad, maybe a squire, or just mercenaries that you got to pay. Squires you don't have to pay, and squires are only 32 points, while mercenaries could be better. You have to roll for it and such. But I have gone through a lot, and there's a number of reasons for this, because they say that you start with 36 points at the minimum if you want a decent chance of success. I've been rolling, for my knights, and they say, okay, 1 to 3, I get 36 points. If I roll better, I get more. And as my groups have died off and have problems and stuff like that, I've been more and more lax about getting more points or allowing more than 3 figures in a group if I'm making a story about it. And that's the one thing that I really like about this adventure. It is the perfect example of the difference between old school role-playing narration and the modern style of narration. So the narration in role-playing has definitely done a 180 since its inception, and it's not a bad thing. It's just that it's gotten more cinematic over the years, right? Because, I know I wanted that a little bit myself. I wanted the daring do stuff. I wanted to do some miraculous events, and old school doesn't lend itself to that. The dice roll, they roll where they may, right? While in the newer one, you get fate points, and you have your characters now are not as easy to make. In the old school, it's like, with the exception of maybe wizards, you just can't just go boom. You can go boom, 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 and you have a character. Wizards, a little bit tougher. But ever since 3rd edition, everybody has choices. Everybody has feats. And if you've seen the new second edition Pathfinder that came out recently, that book's huge. There's tons of feats in that. That's what everybody says. And it's like, you are making your character for a while. You know, you're thinking about it. Kind of reminds me of GURPS, actually, of how that works. I mean, it's just really intense making your character. And also, since you're making a character and it's taking you that long, you're probably making a backstory. Okay, now some people can say, well, that's got plot armor because, you know, and it does. But Dungeons & Dragons, modern gaming has plot armor in general. Because, I mean, you get maximum hit points when you start out, and you have 3 strikes and you're out. You know, you roll against in Dungeons & Dragons, you roll against your Constitution when you're less than 0, and you get 3 strikes before your character dies, and that's plenty of time for somebody to come over and help you. All right, so unless the entire party dies, that's the only way. It's like individual characters don't die in a campaign as much. Okay, it's got to be the total party kill. That's the only way to do it. But the whole idea is to allow the narration to continue, right? I mean, you spend all that time with your backstory. It's not like the old school where you make a character and you don't have any emotional attachment to it and you make the story as it goes. So let's go over how the old school narration works. So the main difference in the original recipe of role-playing is how the creativity happens. While in modern gaming, a lot of that process happens before the characters even hit the tabletop. In the original idea of role-playing, you're making the story as everything progresses. You start off with your characters you make up in 5 minutes or less. You have no emotional attachment to them, and then you just see what happens. One of the perfect examples of this just happened in Grail Quest, which is my character Gilroy, which was a wizard. You know, there was a knight and a squire with him, and they went off, and all of a sudden, you know, there was a fight with some bandits, and the knight and the squire both died. Gilroy got away, and he made it to a local village. However, it was a village, not an inn. In the game, if you're at an inn, you can hire more mercenaries to go with you somewhere. But he's at a village, and in this game, it's not just a one like any of the other David Pulver adventures. You roll a 1d6 from area to area, and then on a 6 you get a random encounter. This says you travel a number of days, and you have to roll that many dice. And a lot of the times, it's like on average 3. Okay, there's a chance that you're going to get a you're going to get an encounter, and he's just by himself. So he's like, I'm just going to stick here. That's the way I said he's not going to even try. He's just going to stick right there and wait for somebody to relieve him or find him and stuff. And I said, fine. So I made 3 more characters, and they went around, and they actually got to him the long way. I didn't try to, because he didn't make it back. There was no news of what happened. Then they made their way to him, and then when they found him, I said, okay, he goes along with them. Fine, no problem. But then something interesting happened. When they finally got into the very next fight, okay, not a big deal, but Gilroy missed his first spell. And as you can see, he's got a dexterity of 14. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the fantasy trip, you roll 3 dice. Under your dexterity, you've got it. And on 3 dice, under 14 or less, that's pretty simple. Not a big deal that it happened the first time. They had a second fight. It happened again. And I said to myself, that's interesting. This guy who normally could cast anything he wanted to, because that's why I gave him a 14 dexterity. I wanted him to guarantee spells, just missed 2 in a row. The first one in every fight. He did okay afterwards, but the first one. And I said, okay, that's what happened to Gilroy. Gilroy got some PTSD in that fight, and now he's nervous every time he gets into a fight. So I made a rule that he must roll 4 dice on the cast the first spell that he casts, or within the first 2 turns of a combat. So that was kind of interesting. And of course, that's a detriment to the character. And no, this is old school. There's no evening out. It's like, okay, you got this disadvantage. You can have an advantage now. No, Gilroy's messed up, you know. And of course, it was an even more tragic story because they were actually getting around and they were doing really good. But then they had to make it back to Camelot because they were pretty hurt and they were bad, but they were close enough to Camelot they could make it. They made it almost to the next section of Camelot. They fought some, I don't know, hobgoblins, or they had a random encounter, and they just all got wiped out. And right at the end, it was so heartbreaking. Of course, that makes the story even better. Because now I allowed that to have a story, the knights to find out about that. And of course, another thing that happened was that there was on to the west of, and it was the hobgoblins, to the west of Camelot, when I was rolling random encounters, they encountered 7 hobgoblins. Okay. And I said, okay, 7 hobgoblins, that's fine. But then when the party that came to relieve them came over, not relieve them, but take over from there and go over towards this knight that they were having a problem with, at the exact same spot, I rolled a random encounter, and I rolled hobgoblins, and I rolled 7 hobgoblins again. 7 of them. And so that all of a sudden made a story right there. It was like that area. If I were to play a campaign and we had an ongoing thing, I'd say there was a hobgoblin settlement over there, and there's a lot of them, and they're giving everybody problems. It's things like that that allow the creativity and just the randomness of it just to play off, and you're just playing off of everything. I just enjoyed the heck out of it. So let's talk more about what makes Grail Quest click as opposed to other adventures. The first thing is it's not necessarily, I said this earlier about the adventure itself. It's pretty standard stuff. It's the Grail Quest. You're recreating it. So you've got, then this ain't a spoilers, if the Black Knight, you got damsel in distress, etc., etc. You've heard a lot of them before. Now, I haven't finished yet. I'm sure there's going to be some, I'm thinking there's going to be some different things by the time I get to the end, but I haven't encountered it yet. But also, one of the things that they bring into the game is mounted combat. They give you an excuse for that, because I haven't come up with mounted combat yet in the game. I see this section there. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. You get -2 to get hit from anybody on foot. And of course, you get a -1 if you at least have horsemanship. If you have expert horsemanship, you have better chance to hit. I don't think there's a penalty at all. But also, when you move more than 8 hexes in a turn, you're getting like the bonus to damage. And of course, if you have a pike or a spear or some pole weapon, you are definitely doing some damage. It's really interesting to try to take that on. Now, and your warhorse attacks too. Everyone gets a warhorse that's a knight. Of course, you only get one. If he dies, you can go back to get another horse, but it's not a warhorse. The thing is, though, I had to look this up because, warhorses in general, I wanted to look up. I knew they can kick and stuff like that, and it's definitely legit. But one of them that seems kind of weird is you can be on foot and your warhorse will actually still attack everybody on its own. Now, I don't know if that was a thing. Leave a comment down below if you know about that, because I was like a little bit like, they're just going to go off on their own, know who the enemy is, and just start attacking things and not just run off. So that was kind of interesting. Now, one of the things I liked is how knights treated each other in the game, okay? And I found out as I was doing these videos about something why I think my games have been a lot harder than it needed to be. Still might not have changed anything, but it might have. The thing is, when you find the wandering knights on the random encounters, you roll to see what kind of fight you're going to get into. Is it going to be a friendly battle? It's to the first blow? Or will it be to the first blood? Or will it be to the death? Okay, and if you lose or you win, the other knight gives you a tribute, or you give them a tribute of a sword or some kind of weapon or whatever, and that's how that goes. Now, this is where I think the mistake was made on my part. It says later, though, it was under wandering knights. It says specifically wandering knights. Well, these other knights that are static that you come across are not, wandering, right? They're in the same place. So I said, okay, these ones must be to the death. Well, it says later on in the rules that I didn't really think of, is when you re-encounter a knight, it goes, and you challenge them again, it goes up a level. Well, you can't do that with a wandering knight. It was totally random, right? So obviously, they meant that to be the case for the static knights that you come up across. So, and they're tough. They're tough. So the idea is you get defeated, you heal up, you come back, they get a little bit ticked and say, this time it's to the first blood, or this time it's to the death, and they are. And I've been doing it to the death every time, and boy, I succeeded in that, to the death. But anyway, definitely a lot of fun for $30, man. I think if you're patient enough, you can get the Grail Quest for $30 in various states of, completeness and stuff, but the main thing is to just get the book is the main thing. Being a collector, you might want the box and such, but basically if you got the book, you're good to go. And so basically, guys, don't forget about those 2 Kickstarters. I definitely like Grail Quest. Don't forget the 2 Kickstarters. You got Harn World, and you also have the Hexagram number 11. Check them out. Links are down below. I'll see you next video.